Good morning, everyone. My name is Maya Luria with TMC for Seniors, and we are in March. It is Brain Health Month, and today we're going to be talking about the spectrum of aging and the wisdom to aging well. So I've got Trish Chilton here with me. She is with the University of Arizona Department of Psychology. Trish, you have covered all sorts of topics related to wisdom, and I'm so glad to have you back here during our Brain Health Month. So welcome.
Thank you. I really appreciate being here, Maya. I love coming here and sharing every wisdom with everyone. We're trying to.
Yeah. So, in addition to what Trish talks about today, she also covers a women's wisdom circle with us monthly that we've been doing as well. So you may see her name sometimes pop up in our calendar. And I'm going to go ahead. We do have an online audience along with an in-person audience. I'm going to put your PowerPoint up for you so that you can get started. And if you're watching from home, please go ahead and leave any questions in the chat, and I will ask Trish afterwards any of those questions. So you're good to start. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Maya. Hi, everyone. My name is Trish Chilton. I'm a doctoral candidate in the Department of Psychology, specifically social psychology. And I know some familiar faces here. I like to start by saying I don't think that I'm particularly wise. So anything that I say here is just like fodder for your thoughts. I'm not going to tell you any startling new revelations on how to be wise. I think that's entirely up to you and your experience, but I will offer some thoughts on it with some studies, empirical literature, and just experiences that I've had in looking at wisdom for the past 4 years in my program. So I want to start off by asking you, do you raise your hand if you feel like you were wise at age 30? Do you feel like you're wise now? Wiser. Okay. So yeah, no one really says, I'm a very wise person. And actually a lot of people who, like Gandhi said, anyone who says they are wise, they're not actually wise. But the research tells us that wisdom is related to aging because of the experiences that we have over a lifetime. So today I'm going to be talking about a spectrum of experience, a spectrum of aging, because in aging, not one size fits all. It's a different experience for everyone, although there are some similarities, and how wisdom may lend itself to aging well. So here's kind of an overview of what we're going to do. Some of you have been to my talks before, and in the Wisdom Women's Circle, I've talked about a little bit of the research on wisdom and what that looks like. So I'm going to do an overview of wisdom research, empirical understanding of wisdom. And then I'm going to talk about 2 different studies and the characteristics of wisdom within those 2 studies. The first one is Informal Life Review. That was my master's thesis, and I'll go and explain that further when we get to it. And the second study is the subjective experience of what it means to age well, and that's my dissertation. And we're going to first just look at wisdom characteristics in different situations, like how do we express wisdom in different situations in our lives within those 2 studies. And then we're going to be diving a little bit deeper into my dissertation, A Spectrum of Aging Experience, and we're going to talk about what I have found in my dissertation study to be very important factors of aging well. And then I'm going to look at how wisdom may connect to those aspects of aging well. And then we're going to have a discussion, if we have time, hopefully, on what you guys feel about wisdom and aging. So first of all, foundational aspects of wisdom. We have our buddy Socrates over here. And he really felt that to be wise and human wisdom was what I started off with, that we actually are not wise, but we're striving to become wise throughout our life. and have a deeper understanding of how to live a virtuous life. And that includes having humility within yourself and the ability to say, well, you know what, I don't know everything. Maybe I can learn something from someone else or from my experiences or even from negative things that have happened in my life. Then a little bit later, we have Aristotle. And he was more of a, like, I guess, black and white thinker. There's practical and theoretical wisdom. So practical wisdom is how things ought to be. And that's really kind of looking at your intuition and your moral and your practical knowledge. Well, I'm eating a really great diet, I'm exercising, I ought to be aging without pain and aging well. But then theoretically, these are descriptive truths of how things actually are. Well, I do have inflammation in my joints. I have some arthritis. Even though I'm eating well and exercising, I'm not feeling as great as I want to, but I'm feeling pretty good. So we have Socrates and Aristotle here. And then really the modern foundations of wisdom research adopted these these ancient thinking ways of wisdom. And I'm just going to really touch on two foundational studies. Wisdom research is pretty new. It's only about 40 or so years old in the whole outlook of psychology research. And the first people who really wrote a paper that is still cited today are Clayton and Buren. And Clayton was a graduate student of James Buren. And they went about asking hundreds of people, what do you think wisdom is? And they looked at all the answers and they came up with basically three things. They came up with, well, it's having cognitive understanding of the nature of human life, pragmatic knowledge from your experience, so kind of like through judgments and actions. It's reflectivity, so self-insight, self-awareness, understanding yourself and knowing yourself from a lifespan perspective through your whole life and all of your experiences and what that may mean for you. And then it's also having compassion for other people, empathy for other people. Baltus and Staudinger looked at it a little bit differently, and they developed the Berlin wisdom paradigm, and that's basically a set of situations which they ask people, what would you do in this situation? An example of one of their questions is, there's a 14-year-old girl, she's pregnant and wants to get married. Should you advise her to get pregnant? And they base your aptitude of wisdom on your answer, and they say, oh, but you have to look at the entire situation. Is this happening in the 1700s? Is it happening now? What culture is she from? So there's a lot of different ways to look at different things and perspectives. And they say that wisdom is expertise in the conduct and meaning of life or the fundamental pragmatics of life. And to me, this looks a lot like Socrates trying to approach life with that humility and just striving to live a virtuous life. And this looks a lot to me like Aristotle. So in this one, the three aspects that I just mentioned, cognitive, reflective, and compassionate domains, was taken one step further by this woman, the University of Florida in Gainesville, Monica Ardelt. And in 2003, she wrote a very, very important paper on the three aspects of wisdom, or the domains of wisdom. And so she said that reflectivity, the circle here is bigger, because reflectivity is really, she said, the cornerstone of wisdom development and having wisdom in your life. It really, to know to thy own self be true, know thyself, right? So having that introspection, humility, like Socrates talked about, self-understanding, self-awareness, when things have happened in your life, or things are happening in your life, how do you handle that? How do you manage adversity? and seeing things from different perspectives, realizing that other people may not think the same way that you are, but trying to understand one another. And then we have the cognitive domain, life knowledge, experience, reasoning, judgment, pragmatism, and the affective or compassionate domain. Another way of looking at this, and I love this diagram, it's from evidencebasedwisdom.com. So the three dimensions are really interconnected and integrated, and these researchers say, well, you really have to have all three to have, I hate to say have wisdom, but have the capacity for wisdom. You could be very, live your whole life as a doctor or a CPA or whatever your career is, and you know everything about that. You could teach it, you could advise someone on it, but are you able to reflect on your personal life? Are you able to have compassion for others? So when she says that reflectivity is the cornerstone of wisdom, she's saying that as one becomes more reflective, self-induced distortions are reduced, and one can gain a clearer appreciation of reality. And this is the growth of the cognitive dimension, which then allows for a deeper appreciation of the complexity of human behavior, which results in greater empathy and sympathy. So this is sort of like in wisdom research, this is the gold standard, so to speak. So now I'm going to move into the studies that I refer to. This one is from my master's thesis, and we're just going to look at how wisdom characteristics are conveyed in certain situations. So I'm just going to go through the fundamentals of the study first. So this data had already been collected in 2018 and 2019. I did this in 2021. And it was in an adult development and aging course, and the instructor went to different living facilities around Tucson, assisted living, independent living, and there were 52 facility dwelling older adults. Their average age was 83, and there were 37 university students who participated. And the students went to visit the older adults 3 different times, and for each visit it was about an hour. And the only thing they had recorded, and the only thing they did was tell me about your life. Just tell me your life story. So it was an informal life review, and it was recorded. And what I did was I read the recordings, and what I wanted to learn was, are these individuals, when they're talking to young people, just naturally talking about their lives? Are they infusing life lessons without even really consciously thinking about it? Is that part of their conversation when they talk to younger people about their lives? That's kind of like a form of self-reflection. So what are life lessons as far as the study goes? Life lessons emerge through fundamental life events. They can be positive or negative. They are persistent, have persistent influence on the life course, and it allows you to learn about yourself and human nature through personal experience. So here's just an example of a life lesson in those narratives. So I moved around a lot, but I often think if I just stayed there in that little town, there'd be so many people that I would not have met. That has played a big part of my life, good friends. So don't be afraid to move around and take an adventure. You get to know different people. It's a good thing. So this is an individual talking about their life experience, but then they're looking at the young person and saying, here's what you could learn from that, because I learned this. So it's a life lesson actually being passed on. So then I ask myself, okay, if they're expressing these life lessons, what characteristics, what types of wisdom are nestled into these life lessons? So I took, first of all, let me back up. This is amazing. I just randomly picked 5 participants because I didn't have time to go through all 52 or so participants. I randomly picked 5 participants, 3 female, 2 male, and their average age was 87. And 3 hours each of interviews, and a total of all 5 people, I found 64 life lessons within their conversations, which to me was really amazing. And remember, this is specifically older people talking to young people. And this is unconsciously just revealing these life lessons to them in conversation. You can think about when you talk about to younger people, whether it's a grandchild or your own children, do you kind of think of yourself talking about life lessons and giving them advice? So which characteristics am I looking at? I reviewed a lot of wisdom papers, and what I wanted to do was try to hone in on what are the wisdom characteristics that all these research papers are talking about the most. They are openness, so being open to growth, new experiences, learning, resilience, and this is really about managing adversity well, and if tough things happen, how do you handle them and come out on the other side? Pro-social behaviors, and that's looking at just what it sounds like, empathy for other people, volunteering, spending time with someone, listening to someone, engaging socially with other people. Emotion regulation, how do you handle difficult emotions and conflict within yourself and from other people around you? Reflectivity, and we talked about that before, so self-insight, self-awareness, and then pragmatic knowledge, it's just that experience of life and understanding human behavior. So these 6 wisdom characteristics I compiled from all the literature, and I was asking myself, which one of these are people talking about the most when they're talking to young people and talking it specifically within life lessons? And this is what I found. So these numbers down here are just the ID numbers of the participants. But what you can see is, even though it's kind of all over the board with emotional regulation and pro-social and resilience, reflectivity was really the most consistent with all 5. And so that tells me that when people are talking about, it's obvious when you're talking about your life, of course you're going to reflect on your life, but it's deeper than that. It's reflecting on your life lessons, on what you've learned. It's reflecting on self-insight and being aware of yourself. And that really was the most consistent aspect that they were talking to young people about. The next most consistent one was resilience. Pragmatic knowledge. So I'm looking at consistency, not, this one was just way off. She was very resilient, and this poor person didn't have a whole lot of resilience. So most consistent, and the next most consistent when they're talking to young people. Or an example of reflectivity, or the self-insight and self-awareness, just so you understand what I was looking at. This person was talking about earlier in life when she had gone through a divorce and she realized she finally needed to be closer to her family. And when she went back to her family and to live take care of her mother, and her brother gave her a job, she said, that's when I finally accepted and started healing from it. You've got to accept these things. I realized that I wasn't. And I said to my brother that I waited about 2 years, I think, before I really went back there. And I said, I should have done this right away. And he said, no, you weren't ready. You had to go through certain stages and you weren't ready for it. So we can think back in our lives about things that have happened. We have hindsight now, and we've learned from different things. And when you're talking to young people and just explaining a life event, this is my divorce, but you're inserting something that's really meaningful for you and for the younger person, even if you're not meaning to. I think it's almost an unconscious thing that older people do. It's actually, there's a word for it, it's called generativity. All right, so now we're going to move on to study 2, the Aging Well study. So the Aging Well study is a study, and I don't even know, some of you may have participated in it, I'm not sure, but it's a study that I conducted in 2022, and it was completely over Zoom, and we had 92 older participants and 100 college age participants. And so, like I said, it was completely done over Zoom, and we had some different cognitive assessments, the MOCA. You don't really need to know about all this stuff, but I'm just going to throw it out there so you understand what the study was about. We had two, we call them speech tests, but they're really open-ended questions. And the first one was, what does it mean personally in your life to age well? The second one, we were just asking the individuals to talk about a recent event that had happened within the past 3 weeks, just in as much detail as possible. And each of these were timed for 4 minutes apiece, so they only had 4 minutes to answer each question. And then we had a bunch of online surveys that looked at demographics. I had a couple of wisdom surveys in there, social support, loneliness, personality, and so on. It was on a Qualtrics survey. And then Mind Crowd are a couple of brain games, just to look at cognitive function. And again, we looked at older and younger adults. So this whole study I did for my dissertation, but as you will see, I ended up only taking one tiny little piece of it, and this is the aging well question. Because honestly, I just want to know, I mean, I'm getting older too. I'm not like so young, and I really want to know, like, what does it mean to age well? What is all this aging, you know, what do we do to age well? Really wanted to know that, what people were saying. Lots of times in research, people come into labs and you do surveys and you take cognitive tests, but to me, it's answering some questions, but I wanted to know the answer to a much broader question, what it means to age well. These are the sample demographics. So the mean age of our older adults, there were 92 older adults, was 73. We had 63 females and 27 males, and one undisclosed. And then I'm not going to talk about or look at really the younger people, but the college age students did this for psychology credit, and they were asked the exact same questions that the old people were. What does it mean to age well? And I can give you a few anecdotes to that because it's really, it's funny in a sad kind of way. Younger people are not aware of what it means to age well. Okay, so for my dissertation specifically, we have the 92 older adults. We have the speech task or the open-ended question, what does aging well mean for you personally in your life? And it was recorded over Zoom. They had 4 minutes to answer. All the answers were transcribed and anonymous and great stuff like that. So just like the study I just told you about, I was wondering, well, what characteristics are older people talking about when they're expressing life lessons to young people? I wanted to know, okay, what wisdom characteristics are showing up when people talk about aging well? So just to refresh, here are I use the same exact coding system that I developed for my master's thesis with these 6 different characteristics of wisdom. And here's what we found. So remember in the other study, reflectivity was the most consistent. Here in the green, we see pragmatic knowledge is like off the chart compared to the other ones. And that makes sense to me. Again, these are not people talking to younger people, so they're not conveying really life lessons. They're just talking about what it means to age well. But I will tell you in reading these that there are a lot of life lessons within those. Some people started crying. So it was in 4 minutes. You can't even imagine how emotional it can get when people are talking about this. And a lot of people say, I haven't really given it much thought, but they're talking about their life in 4 minutes. But they're talking about it as far as wisdom goes. Okay, well, I know that I need to exercise. I know that I need to keep learning. And I think aging well is being able to stay engaged with your community. And so these are practical things about life. And these are basically the wisdom characteristics that people are talking about when talking about age well. The second one, most talked about one, is pro-social behaviors. So that means engaging with family, friends, and community, doing things in your community. And I'll show you in a minute what that looks like. But being with family and friends as far as social connection are the most important. And that's kind of obvious too. So just to give you a side-by-side comparison, here's pragmatic knowledge here, and here's pragmatic knowledge here, and the aging well. And then we have the most consistent, self-reflective here. And self-reflective here comes in third. And pro-social was kind of all over the place here. So that's like the difference. So in different conversations and different situations, people are expressing wisdom in different ways. And what that tells me is that, wisdom is not just the single thing of I'm wise. It is we don't really completely understand it, but it's used in different ways in different situations. And this is just like a fun little thing I threw in here. So remember our Dr. Ardell friend and her 3 domains of wisdom. She developed the 3-dimensional wisdom scale. It's a 12-item measure. I actually did use it in my dissertation and the survey. And so the younger adults took it and the older adults took it. And I scored it. And this is what I found. So for the 3 components of wisdom, we have the cognitive component, the reflective, and the compassionate or affective. And the kind of orangish are older adults, and the blues are younger people. So we see that older people in the cognitive component, practical wisdom, understanding human behavior, aspects of life, is a lot higher than younger individuals. And this is interesting to me. Anyone can be reflective on their life, but the reflective component was much, much higher in the older adults than the younger individuals. And honestly, I don't know if that's because it takes life experience just to learn how to reflect on your life. I don't know the answer to that, but the thing that made me, that was most interesting though, is this compassionate. Now, it looks like they're the same, but anything with a p-value, statistical value of 0.05 or below has statistical significance. So officially, older adults are a little bit more compassionate or have them in this survey, compassionate domain, than younger people. But honestly, to me, it looks about the same. So that tells me, that like makes me feel really great that younger people are pretty much level within compassion than as older people. So that's just a fun little thing I threw in there. I'm gonna get some water. That's all we're here. Does anybody have any questions so far? Or?
One question on the previous slide where emotional regulation, it was so low, and I was just curious whether you had any, maybe I was misunderstanding that chart.
This one?
Yeah, that chart where emotional regulation was to be so low, and I just didn't know what made that.
So I looked at emotional regulation again as conflict and ability to manage emotions well in difficult situations and recognize difficult emotional situations with other people. And in the 4 minutes that they had, they just didn't really talk a lot about it. That's basically why. All right. So that was looking at wisdom characteristics. And hopefully what you're taking away from this is that we use wisdom in different ways in different situations. And so wisdom is just not this one and done thing. But that the most important aspect of wisdom is to really know yourself and know yourself through your entire life perspective from childhood on. There are lots of things that happen in our life. And we are conditioned, I believe, to think and behave and understand things in a certain way. But that doesn't mean that we really know ourselves, our true selves. And I could go into a whole thing about Jungian psychology with that, but no time now, I guess. Okay, so my dissertation, I'm not really looking at these things that I just showed you in my dissertation. Like I said, in my dissertation, what I want to do is find out, well, what are people saying that aging well means? And so I looked again at the question, how do older adults describe their experience of aging well? What does aging well mean to you personally in your life? And I'm doing this, because I'm currently in the middle of doing this, through qualitative analysis, using something called inductive thematic analysis. And all that means is, inductive means I go in with no preconceived notions. I'm just an active listener, reading the narratives, trying to see what people are saying. And in doing so, I find themes that people are talking about. And that allows me to develop a code book that I use to code these different things that people are saying. This is all called a grounded theory approach in qualitative analysis, and all that means is there anything new here that's not out there already? Or maybe it's reflects something or a theory that's out there, but there's a little new nuance to it that hasn't been thought of before. That's all grounded theory is. It's just talking about something in a way that other researchers or other people haven't really talked about before. And again, refresh, I'm using the 92 older adults, mean age 73. What does aging well mean personally for you in your life? The 4-minute answer to the question reported over Zoom. Okay, these are just quotes from the narratives. I love aging. I love getting older because this comes with wisdom. And this is from the question, what does it mean for you to age well? For me, aging well means having goals and things that I'm still working toward to fulfill my life. You need to have a multi-dimensional life. Aging well is staying healthy enough to keep the doctors away and manage health so you can continue doing life and enjoying it. Be with people that stimulate me intellectually and emotionally. Aging well is getting to know new people. Aging well is to have a purpose to get up in the morning. What aging well means to me, well, I guess the first thing that jumps to my mind is a nicely aged tequila, but that's not what you're looking for. And I mean, I wish that I could just like throw a ton of them up there because I'm having so much fun. I'm like, this is a dissertation, this is work, like I'm having a blast. Okay, so yeah, you can see, this is everything. All right, this looks really messy, but I'm gonna go through it. So when I said, talked before about developing a inductive thematic map, this is the map. And so here is older adult subjective experience of what it means to age well. And these three main circles around the wheel are so far, now I've only gone through half of the 92 adults. So far I've come up with 6 main themes, and I'm guessing that these are probably going to stay because they're really consistent through everything. And within these main wheels, I have sub-themes that I'm going to talk about as well. And again, all of these really are popping up again and again and again and again. So there's some common themes, but we see that one size does not fit all with aging. So it's a spectrum. That's why I call it a spectrum of aging. And it's really an experiential model of aging in my mind of how I look at it. I'll start over here with autonomy. At first, I was labeling it as independence, just remaining independent, but it was a little more than that. So to me, it's the what of aging well. So it's those functionalities that allow us to continue to be independent. And these include good physical health, and that includes good diet and all the things that the researchers and doctors and podcasts tell you to do to stay healthy. Mental, cognitive, and psychological health, and this is just keeping your brain sharp. This include things like reading, taking a class, doing things like that just sharpen your mind and keep your mind active. Tons of people talked about travel. If you guys were asked this question, how many people would say traveling? I mean, it's just amazing how many people talk about traveling. And I put that under autonomy because you need to have physical and mental health and all of those great things to really travel. And then finances, being financially stable to remain in your home and to have health care and things like that. And then compensation and adaptation is the next one. This is how our older adults compensating for and adapting to age-related change, challenges, and transitions. These include interdependence, so asking for help, having help. If you have that surgery, if you have that thing happen or whatever, who are you going to call on for social help? Is it a family, a friend? This is different than social connection. It's being supported by another person. Adjusting environment to meet needs, and that even includes having a hearing aid or a walker or things like that enable you to continue to function when things are changing in your life. Technology use, there's a lot of people that talk about using a GPS or making lists on their phones. And this was a huge one, adjusting your attitude and frame of mind. That reminds me of resilience. So that's, when difficult things arise, changing your mind, your frame of mind, having a positive attitude about it is something that I saw a lot. And next we have social connection. That's just for the sheer companionship, pleasure, belonging, community, not being isolated. We have friendships, family relationships, and community. This is a community right here where you're at. We have church communities. We have Olive, when people go to Ollie, that's a community. And then we have existential. This is the why. Like, why is it important to age well, aside from just the functionality of it? How do we continue to develop and evolve as a human person? One thing that really irks me and gets under my skin is when people clump older adults into one big group. Oh, you're age 65 well, you're just older. And this is what you should do, this is how you should live. I'm like, no, it's another stage of human development, just like adolescence, just like any other stage. And we continue to change and learn and grow. How is that done? Purpose and meaning, all kinds of spiritual. This does not have to mean religious. It's talking about all kinds of aspects of spirituality, meditation, and openness and growth. That I want to keep on learning and growing. And then we have social contribution, that's volunteering, altruism, selfless actions, listening to other people, giving up your time, your talent, your money, whatever. And then this was like fascinating to me, time. How do you spend time? What kind of goals do you have in the future time? Not a lot of people actually are talking about their past. A lot of people are talking about right now, present time, my retirement time. Now I have time to do things that I didn't have before when I was working. People talk a lot about time. And I've been married for 54 years, things like that. So here's my thematic map of aging well. This is just kind of a snapshot of the main things. After I've coded half of the participants, I have half more to go. But what I'm seeing is people are talking the most about autonomy. And that's the physical health, mental, cognitive health. That's really, really important to individuals. I mean, you've got to, stay with it, right? At least to your ability of within changes and challenges and transitions to keep getting out the door, keep moving. The next is existential. People talk a lot about purpose and meaning in life and openness and growth and continuing to learn. And this is why I'm like, I think that people in researcher fields and psychology need to look more at aging as a stage of development, because people are talking a lot about continuing to have purpose and to grow and to learn and have new experiences. Going back to class or taking a class or learning a new skill or hobby or whatever it is. And then the next most frequent theme is social connection, and that's being with family, friends, and community. And this is how it kind of looks. So remember, the most popular, most frequent was autonomy. People talk most about their physical health. Just staying healthy, just eating right, exercising, whatever that looks like, walking, yoga. The next was mental and cognitive health. And then we have the next most frequent was existential. And people talk the most about having purpose and meaning in their life. And then openness and growth. And then finally, the third most frequent was social connection. Family relationships were really the most important, but followed up closely by friendships and then community. And then this is just half of the people so far. So now what I wanted to do was, we talked about wisdom in the first half, and those wisdom characteristics: openness, resilience, pro-social behaviors, emotion regulation, reflectivity, and pragmatic knowledge. And by the way, I did not base these aging well themes off of that. These aging well themes, like I said, I went in blank mind as much as I could. And we all have our biases, right? But I was really trying to look at what people were saying. And what it looks like to me is a lot of these wisdom characteristics match on to these aging well themes. So I'm going to go through each wisdom characteristic for the next few slides, and we can see how they match on. And that kind of tells me too that when we're thinking about wisdom, to not think about it in so much as being wise in this, in image we have in our minds of what being wise means. We can use wisdom to our personal advantage, not just how we're talking to other people or engaging with other people. This is wisdom for your own personal life and how it may help you to age well. There's a paper, and I'll have it up here, that just came out by a researcher in Austria named Judith Gluck, and it's wisdom in aging, and just the whole how wisdom can enhance well-being in older, adulthood, and so within these wisdom characteristics. So when I look at pragmatic knowledge, I see autonomy, so independence, health, and agency, making those decisions and understanding how to keep ourselves as healthy as we possibly can in any given situation, including changes. I see compensation and adaptation, so understanding how to manage adversity, understanding when to ask for help. And I also see it in time, because we're thinking about our future goals, we're planning, we're thinking about what we're doing right now. How does that look different than it was when I was younger? How is it better? How could I make it better? And then the next one, openness. I also see compensation and adaptation. We have to be open to ask for help. We have to be open to using technology to help us. And we have to be open to changing looking at our frame of mind and having a positive attitude about things. I also see existential, openness to growth and purpose and meaning. Resilience, I definitely see compensation adaptation, because the way that I code this compensation adaptation is, when something difficult arises, how do I manage it well? Pro-social behaviors, that's obvious, social connection and social contribution. Emotion regulation. So again, I see that, and people, like your question, Ellen, people are not talking about emotion regulation a whole lot, but I see that as having adverse situations and being able to look at it with a positive attitude. And then finally, reflectivity, existential, you're self-aware, you're reflecting on your life, you have self-insight, that intuition. And you're also reflecting on past time. So this is how I see wisdom characteristics mapping onto aging well and how we can use wisdom personally in our own lives as we age. All right, and I'm like 15 minutes. I'm gonna give a lot of time because I want to hear, I don't want to stand up here and talk. My throat's getting sore. I want to hear you guys. I'm just kidding. So I have two questions up here, and one is, what are your thoughts on wisdom and aging? And the second one is, how can we use wisdom to age well? And these are suggestions. You can talk about anything related to this topic that you want or ask questions. And I just threw these up here as like reminders of some of the things that we went over in this talk. So we have like 13 minutes. And our tape online questions or discussions too. So I'm going to open the floor.
So if you go back there, Maya, I'll ask you the.
Oh, okay.
I'm back.
So Trish, I do have a couple of questions that have come in, and one was, when you have more women than men in your research, does that skew the data at all?
I don't really know the answer to that question. It may. I have not. What I intend on doing that I have not done yet, and I can get the answer to you, Maya, when I get it, is I'm going to look at the differences, the gender differences in wisdom. I'm going to look at female and male differences, if there are any. So when I do get that answer, I'll get it to you. But right now, I don't know.
Okay, and then is there a financial aspect to aging well?
What people are talking about is having enough to live comfortably without worrying. So eliminating stress from your life that has to do with finances. Doesn't mean that you have to be super wealthy or very wealthy, but having enough to be able to pay your bills if you have any. And healthcare was a big financial aspect of that. And yeah, so they didn't talk about finances for any extras like travel, but definitely to keep the level of stress low in your life.
Right, just to maybe remain comfortable, from the sounds of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then what is the biggest myth about aging well that you found through your research?
Biggest myth about aging well. Probably what the goods that we're sold throughout our life about, well, okay, this is what it looks like. There's a really very famous paper by Rowe and Kahn back in the late 80s, and they talked about something called successful aging, and many of you may have heard of it. It's basically 3 aspects. And they say, well, in order to age successfully, you have to be disease-free, you have to have complete cognitive awareness, you have to have a very active lifestyle, you have to be socially connected. I guess it's more than 3. But that myth, to me, when I'm looking at it, does not look at life transitions that happen. It does not include, well, you know what? Things are, I was getting ready to say the S, like, it's going to happen, but it's going to happen, right? Things happen. We have transitions in our life. I have them right now. I'm 56 years old. I'm not old, but I'm in midlife. Stuff's going on. And according to Rowe and Kahn's Successful Aging, which a lot of research has been based on, in order to age well, these certain things have to be in place. The cognitive wellness and physical health, even though people talked a lot about that in these narratives, they're also talking about, yeah, but when this happens, I have to look at it this way. So it's more of the myth of what the book of, or the goods that we've been sold as a society, of what it looks like and what is actually happening.
Right, and I do feel like it's interesting when you look at all your research. You have components, but you have all the components, right, to help you to age well. And so maybe if something is slightly off, that you sort of feel off kilter, right? So.
Yeah.
So yes, so there's definitely a balance, I think, for everything.
Mhm.
Trish, I'm gonna wrap up with our online audience and let you take questions in person. I want to thank you so much for kicking off our Brain Health Month and sharing with us all about your research to the Wisdom to Aging Well. It was really fascinating to see all those different pieces and what is important. And we look forward to having you again. And of course, seeing you at our Women's Wisdom Circle as well each month. So, and thank you again for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Maya. I appreciate it too.
Thanks so much for being here today. We look forward to seeing you again. Our next talk will be coming up, and it will be next week. It is actually going to be on PRP injections, non-invasive techniques for faster healing. And that's going to be with Dr. Andrew Mahoney with Tucson Orthopedic Institute. If you are interested in attending this class, please give us a call at 520-324-1960. This class will be taking place on Monday, March 11th at 4 p.m. We'll see you again soon. Thank you.